6 strangers of different races and backgrounds all received a mysterious puzzle box on the same day, one filled with hidden mechanisms. After putting in a lot of effort to open the box, a letter suddenly popped out from inside. It read, "Congratulations, you have been selected to participate in a real-life escape room challenge. The winner will receive a reward of $10,000, facing the chance to play a game and earn money at the same time." It seemed like a deal that couldn't possibly lose. So the next day, the 6 people arrived at the address as instructed and entered a room. At that moment, a voice came from the reception room saying, "Please wait a moment. A staff member will arrive shortly." But after waiting for half an hour, no one had shown up. Miller finally couldn't sit still anymore and decided to step outside for a cigarette. But with one careless pull, he snapped the door handle clean off. Miller immediately looked confused and helpless, and in the next second, the others began blaming him. Just then, Danny noticed a dial on the broken door handle and excitedly told everyone that the game had already begun. If they wanted to escape, they had to search the room for clues, so everyone immediately started rummaging through everything. Mike first found a screwdriver hidden inside a book. Suddenly, Zoe noticed the title of the book, Fahrenheit 451. She immediately walked to the door and turned the dial, hoping to use the code to open it, but the door remained tightly shut. At that moment, however, the temperature in the room suddenly began to rise rapidly. In the panic, Miller spotted a fire extinguisher nearby and tried to smash the door open with it. But to everyone's surprise, the extinguisher turned out to be made of plastic. Just as they were feeling frustrated, the temperature inside the room rose sharply again, making it feel like they were trapped inside an oven. In desperation, Zoe suddenly noticed a key attached to the fire extinguisher. When she opened the reception room door, what appeared before her was a mannequin. Just then, the phone suddenly rang, but the voice on the other end was only a recording telling them to follow the rules. When Jason impatiently hung up the phone, he accidentally triggered another mechanism. Iron walls immediately sealed off the room, and with the extreme heat building inside, everyone began to panic. At that moment, Zoe noticed a clue on the door that mentioned a coaster, so she walked to the table and pressed the mechanism, and suddenly an exit appeared in the wall. But the moment she released her hand, the exit immediately closed again, and Jason realized how the mechanism worked. If they wanted to keep the exit open, someone had to keep pressing down on the coaster. Working together, Jason crawled inside first to scout ahead. Then, using the screwdriver Mike had found, he successfully pried open a ventilation shaft. Soon, the others climbed out as well, but since someone couldn't hold the coaster forever, Zoe quickly grabbed a cup of water and placed it on top of the coaster. Seeing that the trick worked, after Zoe left, Miller and Danny used the same method. But unexpectedly, by the time they tried to fill the last cup, the water dispenser had already run dry. At that moment, flames suddenly burst from the ceiling. With no time to hesitate, Miller remembered the flask he carried with him. He immediately poured the liquor into the cup, and at the very last second, the two of them managed to escape. After passing the first stage with a narrow escape, the group arrived inside a small wooden cabin. Amanda immediately began to panic and tried to call for help, only to discover there was absolutely no signal. Meanwhile, Jason discovered a door, but to open it, he needed to enter a 6-letter password. They kept trying different names they could think of, but none of them worked. Then Miller suddenly remembered his past experience of driving while drunk, based on a clue written on the wall. There had also been 6 people in the car that night, and before the accident, they had been singing a song, the same song hinted at by the clue on the wall. Unexpectedly, he guessed the password correctly, and the group opened the door. The woman had assumed that the exit to the escape room would be ahead, but instead, they found themselves standing in a freezing wasteland. The temperature here had already dropped below 0, completely opposite from the outside world. Suddenly, the door shut automatically, locking the 6 of them inside. Curious, Danny lightly touched the wall. Instantly, freezing winds blasted through the entire room, and the group once again began searching for clues according to the game's rules. Just as everyone was busy searching, Miller suddenly craved a cigarette and stepped aside to smoke, but accidentally fell into an ice hole. At that moment, Amanda found a down jacket and handed it to Zoe. Since there was only one, the group had to take turns wearing it. Meanwhile, Mike found a fishing rod hanging on a tree. Zoe then searched her pocket and discovered a compass. Following the direction it pointed, they found a metal rod inside the mouth of a statue, an ice hole, a fishing rod, and a metal hook. The clues to pass the stage were now clear. Zoe attached the metal rod to the fishing rod and lowered it into the water. Before long, she pulled up a key from beneath the ice. But the key was frozen inside a block of ice, and despite trying every method they could think of, they still couldn't get it out. Jason suddenly had an idea and suggested melting the ice using Miller's lighter, so Miller casually tossed the lighter onto the ground. Danny bent down to pick it up, but the moment he grabbed it and turned around, he accidentally fell into the ice hole. Everyone immediately panicked and tried to rescue him, but unfortunately, before long, he became the first person to die. The others began blaming Miller for Danny's death, but there was nothing they could do now. No one had expected that a game would actually claim someone's life, but with no time to dwell on it, their priority was retrieving the key from the ice. Encouraged by Jason, the remaining 5 people decided to melt the ice with their body heat, and soon they managed to retrieve the key. Jason opened the door, but suddenly the ice beneath them began cracking apart. With no time to hesitate, they rushed into the next escape room, but to everyone's surprise, it was an upside-down bar. After the room shook violently for a moment, the phone suddenly began ringing. Mike answered it, but only a harsh sound came through the receiver, followed by music. Once again, the group began searching for clues. Mike soon noticed that the pool table hanging above them was missing the number 8 ball. Just as he was about to investigate, Miller suddenly realized something was wrong and stopped him, because at that moment a deep pit appeared in the floor and sections of the ground fell into the abyss. Realizing the danger, everyone immediately moved away from the center and pressed themselves against the walls. During this crisis, Jason spotted a door in the distance, but it had no handle. Amanda then climbed up to a higher spot and found a locked box beside a refrigerator, but no matter how she tried entering the password, it kept showing an error. At that moment, Zoe discovered a puzzle piece. Soon, she completed the puzzle and used the pool table as a clue to determine the code. But surprisingly, when Amanda entered the code, it still displayed an error. Suddenly, the phone rang again, and the floor began collapsing once more. Zoe lost her grip and accidentally fell down. Luckily, the last remaining floor panel caught her. As she lay there, she suddenly remembered the plane crash she had once survived, and the realization hit her. She quickly told Amanda to enter the password in reverse. Sure enough, the box opened. Amanda took out the number 8 ball, which perfectly fit the missing door handle. Just as she hurried back toward the others, the 8 ball accidentally slipped from her hands and rolled onto the floor. Seeing it about to fall into the abyss, Amanda leapt after it without hesitation and managed to retrieve the ball. At that moment, the phone rang again, and the floor began collapsing once more. In the middle of the crisis, Amanda threw the 8 ball to Jason, but she herself was left hanging in midair. Soon, she could no longer hold on, and she fell to her death in front of everyone. Using the 8 ball they obtained, the remaining 4 people entered another escape room. To their surprise, the room was an exact replica of hospital beds they had once been treated in. It turned out that all the selected participants were survivors of disasters, and their medical records clearly documented their past experiences. The person who organized the game wanted to see which of them was truly the luckiest. As the countdown began, they had no time to think and immediately started searching for clues to escape. Soon, the group found several X-ray films and obtained clues from them. Jason then pulled over a testing machine and realized from the hints that this stage was designed to test the limits of their heart rates. If they reached the required threshold, they could advance to the next stage. In the panic, Miller volunteered to go first, but his heart rate was too low and failed the test. Jason then brought Mike forward, but he also failed. In order to push his heart rate to the limit, Jason picked up a defibrillator and, after persuading Mike, pressed it without hesitation. Mike's heart rate instantly shot past 200 beats per minute, yet it still failed to meet the requirement. Not only did the test fail, it also cost Mike his life. Meanwhile, Zoe tried to break the rules and began destroying the surveillance cameras in the room. Suddenly, the countdown ended, and poison gas tanks opened automatically. Zoe instantly collapsed. In the critical moment, Jason stepped forward himself. If high heart rate couldn't pass the test, then he would try reaching the lowest heart rate instead. Jason steadied his breathing, and the monitor displayed an extremely low heart rate. Stage clear. Jason and Miller then entered another escape room. But while activating the mechanism, they accidentally inhaled a hallucinogenic drug hidden in the door handle. Suddenly, both of them became dizzy, and everything around them began twisting and distorting. In the confusion, Miller discovered a syringe. It was the antidote. Immediately, the 2 men began fighting over it, and during the struggle, Jason crashed into a pillar and died. With no time to hesitate, Miller injected the antidote and moved on to the next escape room. Suddenly, the walls of the room began slowly moving, crushing inward toward him. At the very last moment, he discovered a clue and followed its instructions, quickly hiding inside a closet and successfully passing the final stage. After escaping the crushing room, Miller finally reached the prize room. But unexpectedly, just when he thought he had won the game and could leave with the money, the mastermind still refused to let him go. The man picked up a rope and hoisted Miller high into the air. At that critical moment, Zoe suddenly appeared and saved Miller just in time. It turned out that back in the hospital room, she had pretended to be dead and successfully ambushed 2 staff members, allowing her to escape. Destroying the surveillance cameras had been her way of preventing them from watching her. Just when the 2 thought they were finally safe, a man suddenly jumped out and instantly subdued Zoe. Zoe. At the critical moment, Miller appeared and smashed a wine bottle over the man's head, knocking him unconscious. He then picked up the gun on the ground and fired 2 shots without hesitation. 6 people had entered, but only Miller and Zoe remained. The next day, the police quickly came to investigate the situation. But when everyone arrived at the scene, the place had already turned into a pile of ruins. On one of the walls were several large words that read, "No escape." Zoe tried to explain what had happened, but with no evidence, the police refused to believe her. 1 year later, the two sat together at a table, once again recalling what had happened. Zoe then pulled out a newspaper that reported evidence suggesting the other participants had died in accidents. She then revealed another clue and found the coordinates of the mastermind behind everything. This time, she had come to invite Miller to expose them together. Determined to reveal the lies hidden behind those newspaper reports, Miller reluctantly agreed and decided to go with her to investigate. Meanwhile, a plane about to crash suddenly plunged from the sky. But instead of calming the passengers, the staff inside found a key. When they opened the cabin door, they discovered the plane's nose heading straight toward a mountain. The pilot was unconscious, and the entire plane eventually crashed. But unexpectedly, it was all just another test, and the subjects of the experiment were Miller and Zoe, who were currently on board that very plane.